So we are going into a recession, and it's not going to be an easy, fun recession that lasts only, a year or so. It might be a serious recession lasting up to 5 years. And why is this happening? You can trace this back quite a ways back in the economic and monetary history of the United States, but most, directly, and to keep it succinct, this all comes back to 2008, the great financial crisis, and then the stimulatory policies that came into effect, quantitative easing, and so on, fiscal stimulus, monetary expansion, and easy money to save the economy and to bail out the banks and everything else that went along with that. So what did that do? And what would have happened had that not occurred? If there was no intervention, we likely would have seen a serious depression lasting 10 years or more, and many businesses would have been closed that never come back. But because we had that intervention, we had a financial inflation in the asset prices and everything else, and the hope was, and it did work out that way, the economy as a whole, the real economy, would pick up. It didn't happen all at once. Even though the stock market came back relatively quickly, I think it was within a year or two. Most of the real economy took a little bit longer, but it all did come back more or less. And so the economy was strong. And strong is a relative term here. It was strong, but there are structural weaknesses in our economy. But so that all lasted until now. And there was a price to be paid because of what happened, because of the intervention. The price was possible inflation down the line. And now if the market is going to crash again, bond yields have been going up over a year now, almost half a year now, and things don't look super great, right? The stock market's crashed as well. The tech bubble has occurred. So with all of this taken into consideration, and suppose a crash occurs, can they do the same thing and just pump money in and save the system? Very unlikely, because the Fed has two mandates. You have to remember that. Two mandates: unemployment and inflation. In 2008, calling upon their mandate to keep unemployment low, they intervened into the market, because if they had not, a lot of people would have been jobless, unemployed. And the Fed's mandate is to keep the number of unemployed people at or around the natural level, which is maybe 5%, 3 to 5%, plus or minus 1 or 2. And it used to be that if it went above by 1%, that was something cause for concern. But at that time in 2008, it was very likely that unemployment could have hit 17%, 25%, 30%. And then once that happens, you lose possibly a generation of economic progress, and a lot of nasty things can happen. Just society sort of falls into malaise and discontent. Your country's economy won't come back the way it was. It has lasting effects. So they intervened to prevent that. The other mandate is inflation, to keep inflation low, to keep prices stable. Well, because they intervened, prices went up. They pumped money in, they printed money, as the colloquial term goes, and everything went up, and the economy was saved, and unemployment was kept low. But inflation rose, and now their job is to keep inflation low, right? So their mandate is to keep inflation stable and low. Now they have to intervene again, but it can't be the same kind of intervention. The kind of intervention they did to keep unemployment low produced inflation, and it's a sort of stimulatory effect. It raises the economic machine, the economic bubble, grows it, to keep everybody excited and happy, and keep people employed and businesses active. But now that inflation has high, the natural instinct is to reduce that bubble, right? Well, that is in fact what they've been doing, and they've stated publicly that they hope the markets just kind of do it for them. But in case it doesn't fully go all the way, they're going to raise the rates, and raising the rates will have the effect of bringing down asset prices across the board. Now, that will result in a recession, and that recession has been coming for some time. There is an asset price bubble, there's a real estate bubble, a lot of wages are in bubble territory for many industries. Tech as a whole is very likely in a bubble. crazy valuations, right? Insane numbers. I mean, for housing too. You go around some of these houses in 6 years, 8 years, prices have gone from 2 million, 1 million to maybe 15 million in some cases. I've seen many of these houses along those lines, and across the price range. $200,000 home becomes a $2 million home. So this recession, they're going to try to bring inflation down. That means they slow down the market, slow down the this is the thing. It's probably easier to bring inflation down than to bring unemployment down. It's just a simple fact of human, probably comes down to human behavioral psychology. People, if you give them $100 and you take away 20, they're going to be, upset a little, but all in all, they're still going to be more productive and than if you just take away everything and then later on give them 20. So the Fed likes to err on the side of producing inflationary bubbles versus just keeping everything very tight. There are these other related side ancillary topics, also very important, having to do with the national debt and so on. If you raise rates too high, possibly in the future fiscal spending will become unmanageable due to the interest payment, but I don't think that's really what's driving the Fed's immediate thinking at the moment. The real concern is keeping inflation low. But so you produce the bubble and then you bring it down. That's how it works. Up and then down. And overall, you hope that the economy is growing. That's called secular growth. Secular trend. Secular meaning, kind of like throughout the ages, kind of universal over the long term. And this produces overall prosperity. If you look at the United States between, I don't know, let's go to the beginning, 1776 and 2022, overall you would have seen secular growth, just measured in real terms. So this is the general landscape of the policy making apparatus. You want to, if the economy is slowing or some problem, you want to boost it up. And then you get inflation, you likely get inflation because it's something that occurs in every asset price inflation. People just have too much money. These are all money phenomena. So if there's too much money, like Milton Friedman said, inflation is every monetary phenomenon, right? So if you have too much money in the system, the prices of everything will go up because everybody has money. You may have seen this in your daily life. You could have seen. You might be living in a neighborhood with a coffee shop, maybe a third wave coffee shop, and suppose everybody in your neighborhood is a high income tech worker or designer or fashion person or what have you, creative entrepreneur. And next thing you know, a couple of years pass, this neighborhood's up and coming, your coffee shop's lattes go from $3, $5, because people in the neighborhood have so much more money as the economy grows and their wages grow that they're sort of willing to spend that much money. And also presumably this just kind of ripples across the board. Prices of everything goes up. Raw materials, it could be machinery, it could be water, it could be coffee beans in this case, inputs, shipping, what have you. Well, so inflation is the monetary phenomenon. Too much money, you have inflation. Too little money, it's kind of called a disinflationary phenomenon when it's a trend, but you essentially have when you have recessions, that's when a recession will occur, or slow economic growth. And that's happened too in the United States, in the history of the United States. There have been periods when there hasn't been enough money around. Back when money was just directly tied to bullion, silver and gold, that was a very tangible concern. You might not have enough gold in the country to give everybody money. In the recession of 1819, that was a serious concern, that when U.S. debts were recalled to Europe during at the end of the Napoleonic War, a lot of the U.S. banks had to close their lending facilities because there wasn't enough money around. They had in turn lent money from Europe, and then when Europe called their loans, U.S. banks called their further loans from the individuals and banks, state banks in many cases, in most cases. So these state banks who had also lent out to farmers and prospectors and settlers, they had to call back those loans, and it just kind of rippled. It was a very tangible physical effect of not having enough gold and not having enough money. And when that happens, it's also happened in the 1970s. people just have less, it's like $100 is a big deal for a lot of people. It's a big deal for a lot of people today, of course, right now, but just imagine it being a big deal in general to have, there aren't enough $100 to go around. It's not so much that you don't have $100, there just aren't enough $100, which is in fact probably the one and the same thing. If you think about the a set amount of money in a society and it being dished out to everybody according to their productivity, some people are highly productive, they're super agile, and maybe they might even be business entrepreneurs, or they could be professionals. You always want to keep paying them. An old adage is always, if you want a recession-proof job, doctor, for example. Everybody always needs a doctor. The medical care is always in demand. So doctors are always getting paid in dollars, even if there aren't enough dollars going around. But on the other end of the spectrum, I don't know, dog hairstyling or so what have you. If you have so many precious dollars, you have like $5 a week to spend out to give to people for things you need to survive. You do food, essential services, living. You're gonna keep back some of these dollars that you might have otherwise lent out if all the time you were getting new dollars and it was just easy money all around. So that's the kind of feel of money there. When that happens, things slow down. A lot of businesses go under, but not always necessarily essential businesses. It's kind of like pruning a tree. You have a lot of growth. You prune the productive branches. They keep growing. They're fine. The unproductive branches, they get pruned. And in the same way, in a recession, the companies that go under are usually, well, not always, and there are exceptions, and I will get to that. Usually businesses that just aren't in high demand, aren't very high productivity. And the exception is that you might have, I don't know, some sort of technology industry or research facility, whatever. Those things always benefit from easy money because they're always projecting growth into the future. And maybe that falls under not productive, right? So, I mean, there are stories of this too. I think Carl Icahn talks about firing, 20 stories plus of people who were doing nothing. In easy times, these kinds of effects proliferate across the economy. Companies hire a lot of people. They want to justify expanded capex. They want to justify expanded spending across the board. So, it looks like they're growing to their shareholders, and they hire people who are superfluous. But when then the money the tide comes back in, you get to see who's been swimming naked. The people with swim trunks, the people who are prepared and productive, they're totally fine. So the tide comes in and out. The money will go up and down, and the money's up. Stimulatory, inflationary environment. It's easy, just spend, buy, get the ball rolling. And you would be kind of silly not to do that. That's the thing to do. And then always, of course, the recession comes in because overall the pie expands, but it goes like, in secular terms it expands, but it comes back always a little bit as it expands, as it rolls back in. But so when the rollback comes in, the recessionary environment occurs, you want to make sure you have enough money. Money becomes precious, even when we're on a fiat currency. It becomes precious. There just isn't as much money going around. There aren't as many buyers for goods going around. There isn't just as much money. So you want to probably curb your spending, probably save a little bit more, probably invest a little bit smarter. You don't want to go for these, Shopify's and whatever, and what was the Pelotons and so on. You want to spend your money on the value stocks, right? Companies that are producing, strict definition perhaps, revenue here and now that are undervalued by the market because of whatever reason, and those would be the smarter choices. You want companies with cash flow. You want businesses with cash flow. You don't want future hopes and dreams. You can't cash those in. And in recession environment, you need to focus on what you can cash in and what you can produce.